my colleagues. I'll try to not be too repetitive, although I will talk about sea level rise. And I know that you're all familiar with the Surfrider Foundation, but I thought it'd be worthwhile to quickly provide an overview of our mission to explain the context for how we evaluated the strategic plan. Surfrider is an international organization dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean, beaches, and waves through, and this is the important part, a powerful activist network. We have more than 80 chapters in the United States. We have more than 20 in California. I can't give you the exact number because there's new high school and college clubs coming up all the time. Collectively, our network is on the front lines of beach access, water quality, coastal preservation, plastic pollution, and ocean protection, and it's our chapter volunteers who really drive what we do. And while Surfrider and the State Lands Commission have differed on some coastal projects, our mission and yours have generally more often aligned over the years, including on such efforts as defending the public's right to access Martin's Beach, the ongoing joys of that, applauding your leadership on pay equity at the Maverick Surf Contest, and elevating efforts to address the pollution crisis happening at the Tijuana River Valley. We commend the 2019 successes, and your staff, frankly, deserves a huge shout out for being such a progressive, modern, responsive agency that is evolving in a deliberate and self-aware way. Which brings me to the priorities ahead. I made a list when I was thinking about this, but it really is more like a web or maybe a Venn diagram, because of course what happens in one area affects the others. For example, the response to sea level rise will define your approach to coastal access, which has equity consequences. And as a practical matter, no single issue puts California's identity and economy at risk as much as the pending impacts of sea level rise. But even if the State Lands Commission prioritizes responding to and preparing for sea level rise in the most proactive way possible, if other state agencies aren't on the same page, then our beaches will be lost. And so first and foremost, we suggest building on the public trust coordination project model to maximize alignment between all state agencies to ensure that sea level rise adaptation is adequately factored into all projects and policies in a way that maximizes coastal preservation and access, because clearly we really need our beaches. And this also ties into the current strategic goal of engaging Californians to help safeguard their trust lands and resources, because so many people don't realize the risks that we're facing. And this point was really driven home in the LAO's December report on the state's lack of preparation regarding sea level rise. As somebody who grew up in the Mojave Desert, I wasn't as clued into coastal politics as people who own property on the beach. But that beach means as much to people who live inland as it does to people who have an ocean view. And if more Californians realized what they face losing, I truly believe that more people would engage. So if you factor in the economic inequity between coastal and inland populations and the legacy injustice that are related to economic inequity, and I mean, this is a huge conversation, one that's important to keep having as you continue incorporating and prioritizing equity and environmental justice into your framework. So additionally, on sea level rise, we support the continuance of the Coastal Hazards Removal Program, obviously with the oil structures as well, but on our beaches, on our coast, not only are these structural remnants a danger, but in the face of rising seas, we need to be eliminating and prohibiting as much as possible any structures that will increase erosion. Finally, last point on the sea level rise topic, we would like to see attention paid specifically to Humboldt Bay. I'm biased, I live up in Humboldt County on Humboldt Bay, but it is considered by many experts to be ground zero for sea level rise. And the remoteness and the relatively low regional population means that the pending impacts, which will be devastating to the economy up there, are often overlooked. And it is a perfect place to perhaps pursue pilot adaptation projects and work with other state agencies to take care of. Addressing and eliminating the sewage, trash, sediment, and chemical waste polluting the Tijuana River Valley region continues to be one of our national priority campaigns, and so we hope to see the Commission and staff continue to advocate for solutions to this crisis as well. There has been a lot of momentum, there's actually funding, so I think this is a good chance to finally get something done. Surfrider does support the rapid development of renewable energy sources for all the reasons already outlined in response to the climate crisis. We do want that stakeholders to be continually engaged in proposed offshore wind projects, given the lack of data and the increasing concerns related to that industry. And again, we appreciate your staff being very responsive to those concerns when they have been articulated. Ensuring access to public trust lands should, of course, continue to be a priority. Surfrider Santa Barbara chapter has engaged in the process to correct the longstanding wrong that has prevented the public from accessing the beach through Hollister Ranch, and we anticipate participating in the ongoing battle at Martins Beach as well. And finally, and I'm trying to make sure I say this in the most 50c3 nonpartisan way, what happens in November on the federal level will likely influence your planning. You know, we may find ourselves digging into defense mode even deeper than we have over the past few years. Efforts to extract as much as possible from our public lands may ramp back up and even intensify. And in any case, I think it's, Surfrider thinks that it's very critical to continue fortifying our defenses against the longstanding threats such as offshore oil drilling, and also to proactively defend against new ones such as seabed mining. And while California's marine jurisdiction may end 3 miles out, your impact, you know, as we've seen, has the potential to reach so much further. And so with that, thank you.
And then my last question goes to something that Jennifer Savage addressed in the mission of Surfrider, which is protecting the coast, but also allowing and recognizing that people enjoy visiting the coast and the importance of accessibility to our coastline. There's been a real surge of interest in helping to support access to the beauty and the recreational opportunities of the California coast to all Californians. My husband grew up in San Francisco, and so the ocean was always a part of his upbringing. I didn't go to the Pacific Ocean for the first time until I was about 12 years old, and I didn't go back again until the end of high school, growing up here in Sacramento. And so I really feel that very viscerally, that you can be in California and not know what's just, you know, on the other side of the state. And but my question for all of you representing the environmental community is, how do we know when we're getting it right with these two pieces of, for instance, the Surfrider goal of protecting sensitive habitat, protecting sensitive coastline, and river areas of along our rivers, but at the same time having access for Californians and promoting access to Californians. So I'd really love to hear that a little bit more about that from all of you. And that is my last one.
Well, I'll jump in. And so we do take the enjoyment part of our mission very seriously, and you know, really believe that everybody who lives in California or visits California has the right to go to the coast and experience that joy and peace and amazing experience that you can really only find in big, awesome outdoor spaces. So, so thank you for highlighting that. I appreciate it. We also, of course, work to be good stewards of our coastal resources, and there's a couple different parts of that. I want to highlight, first of all, that there is a very common argument that coastal property owners who don't want visitors use, which is that somehow if you open the coast, that the hordes of, you know, unwashed masses will descend upon the coast and destroy it and trash it. And we hear that, I mean, I hear that almost like on a daily basis in the work that I do. So, you know, we try to be careful about not aligning ourselves with the idea that public access equals destruction of natural resources. However, there is a very real concern, you know, that I think plays out in our natural places, where if you have a lot of visitors and not adequate staffing and education and other aspects, that it can be, you know, overwhelming for the natural environment. And so a lot of places where we see that happen, you know, say like I'm up in the North Coast, you know, where some of our state parks have been chronically underfunded, and it's a rural area, and there's not necessarily a lot of other eyes on people all the time. And so sometimes it's just a matter of if there were more rangers around. Sometimes it's a matter of education and outreach, and sometimes people don't know habitat is sensitive. I live along the dunes up in Humboldt County, and if you didn't know that the dunes were full of life and special, and there's 41 different kind of bees that live there and all these different plants, people just, they might not think twice about stomping across, different areas. But we have a great organization, Friends of the Dunes, that does a lot of outreach. And so some of this is just a simple matter of ensuring that there's adequate funding, adequate staffing, adequate outreach for the public, so that everyone, in addition to enjoying these incredible places, feels that stewardship opportunity. So I would say that that's primarily the direction that we come from, and we try to implement that through our chapter network, actively working on the ground to educate people and advocate for more funding at the local and state levels. And then on a statewide level, of course, we advocate for more in the budget for our beloved state agencies. So that's what we try to do.
I think the observation that many have been making about just how intersectional all the issues are that we're dealing with is just becoming so much more clear. But given that we're in this reality of where there are finite resources, yes, there are going to be opportunities in terms of new revenue generation. But I guess I'm thinking in my head about priorities. And how do we, given that intersectionality and the urgency of just, the work that's before us, what would you say this commission ought to be prioritizing in terms of our dedication of staff resources, our time, and just given the resources that we currently have to work with now? Jennifer.
It's actually a perfect question to ask nonprofits, because everything is always urgent, and we always have to figure out what to do first, with not a lot of money usually. So, so I feel like we should all be prepared for this one. I also would agree that the climate change / public health lens is a really potentially efficient way to look at this. And as I said before, so much of what I see, because we do work with a lot of state agencies and go to a lot of these different meetings, and is the need for the state to coordinate. And I know that you are one commission. I would just if whatever you can do to inspire other agencies to come along on these challenges would be really helpful. My sense is that there is an administration-wide movement and legislative interest in getting state agencies to be more aligned. So hopefully there's some momentum around there. The LAO report had some great suggestions in it, and wherever state lands can plug into that, I think is really effective. But it is such a big problem. It does intersect in so many places in so many ways that the state lands alone, no matter how great everybody does, can't solve the problem. So really getting everybody, the right people together in an effective way, not just like more committees and meetings, but really getting everybody to take the kind of actions that are necessary in a unified and aligned way, I think is so critical.
Thank you, Jennifer.